Hello everybody, my name is Rob and I'm a final year industrial design student, and in this video vlog I'm going to be taking you on my journey getting towards the final degree show. For my project specifically, my project is called Project Phoenix, and the whole aim of my final year project is to design a device or a product that is able to help people who have multiple sclerosis, and specifically to help them deal with a symptom known as heat sensitivity. Those that have MS really struggle when being within a hot outdoor environment or when they are doing exercise. And so I'm trying to create a vest garment that is able to keep those who have MS cool whilst they are exercising. Ultimately, this is all about incorporating accessibility and inclusivity to make sure that everybody can be able to have the right to exercise. So I'm going to be taking you on my journey as I head towards the degree show, starting to put together my final designed garment. So to break down my final design and the prototype that I need to create for the degree show, I have 4 key elements I need to create. So there is an outer vest garment, which is mainly for aesthetic and slightly interactional purposes. There's an inner vest garment that needs to be created as well. And then lastly, the more industrial design stuff is a central panel, similar to a heart rate monitor that goes on the front of the vest, and a battery holder, quite literally to hold the battery for the whole vest system. And that needs to be created as well. So they are the 4 key elements that I'm going to be making to ultimately create a both aesthetic and interactional prototype so that I can show that off at the degree show.
So the first thing that I did in preparing for the degree show was creating the final design of the back battery holder. And this was intended to be a prototype that would be 3D printed and would be serving mainly as an aesthetic model, but also partially interactional. And I wanted to be able to show off how it would fit within the inner vest for my degree show display. And so here it is, the final design of the back battery holder, 3D printed in a couple of hours using white PLA. Now, for the central panel, I wanted to look back at my earlier iterations and work out how can I make them more inclusive for the final design ready for the degree show.
So it's nice and big, and it'll be, hopefully the plan of what I'm wanting to do is that it will be a retractable one. So much like how when you press down on a ballpoint pen and it goes in and it goes out. So that's the same kind of feeling that I want this to be. And I think I definitely want to explore whether with the button I can put a texture on here to differentiate it between where the button is and where the button isn't. Just because it's something that will make it more inclusive. It means that for individuals who may have a visual impairment, that they will then be able to interact with this in the best way possible. So this looks a bit weird. I've got some gardening gloves, and you may be thinking, why have you got gardening gloves, Rob? You've lost the plot. These actually can be quite helpful inclusive design tools, and that's because individuals with MS struggle with numbness. And so that means that when he's holding like his set of keys, so this is a craft knife, but when he's holding a set of keys, he can't actually always feel that they're there anymore, and so he drops them sometimes. And so one way that I can simulate this numbness, at least for me a little bit, is using gardening gloves, because they have a nice thick bit here, which is quite difficult to feel through. And it's a similar method that is used for helping individuals that have dexterity impairments or even individuals that have dementia. So for example, if I feel along here at the moment, just even by touch, I can't actually tell where the button is. I generally could press anywhere and I wouldn't actually know where the button is. And so this is something that I need to consider in terms of inclusive design of how do you make sure that that button is actually noticeable and something that you can feel and interact with.
And so after the first little examination of how inclusive my initial designs were, I went straight back into CAD and changed the design to try and make the on and off button more inclusive, and so that it would have that tactile feedback.
So there we go, the print is done and dusted, and already this just looks so much better. It feels so much better. I can actually feel that that's an on and off button, and it actually has that nice texture. It's nice that it's raised up.
So I've got the gloves,
and can now finally see how it feels to hold the central panel and interact with it with a slight sensory impairment in a sense. So the difference in terms of the levels of where the button is and where it isn't is really clear, which is fantastic. That means that that's nice and clear, and that at least gives a sense of that it's something to interact with rather than the rest of the surface that's on its own level. In terms of the on and off button that is extruded on the center part, that can be felt more so on the circular part, on the semicircle part of the symbol, less so on the dash line. But I think it would be enough to be able to indicate that that's where the button is. And yeah, I'm really happy with that. It just means that it's those little things of being able to feel that with your fingers, even when you may be feeling some numbness, that can be a little bit of a game changer to make it more of an inclusive design and an accessible design for individuals with multiple sclerosis. So after finishing the design of the final central panel and creating the final prototype, I then set out to start finishing off the seam pattern for my outer and also the inner vest. I had to take a multitude of different measurements and make sure that all of the different separate elements would align up from the prototypes that I had previously created. And this was a long process, but overall this would be what would help to make my final design as accurate as possible. One particular process that I really enjoyed testing and trialing out was the creation of my logo and putting it onto the garment using a sublimation process. This was really interesting for me to do, as I don't normally do this type of textile prototyping, but overall it was also really exciting because it started to help me to see how the Phoenix brand tied in with the whole overall design of the final product. After having carried out some tests of placement of the logo and how it would look on the fabric I intended to use, I started to put together the other elements of the vest, especially, as you can see here, the ventilation fins that go on the upper back of the outer vest. These were quite tricky and they needed a lot of time of working out where they would go and making sure that the fins would stay open. I also carried out some testing, as you can see here, with the sizing holes to make sure that the central panel would be able to connect to the conductive popper connectors, and with a little bit of fiddling about, I was able to eventually get it to work. And so now I was on the final straight in putting together the final logo placement and the final aesthetics overall of my prototype that would be ready for the degree show. So after months and months of designing and hard work and effort being put into this project, here is the final design of Phoenix. Phoenix has the ability to empower so many of those who have multiple sclerosis and suffer with heat sensitivity to be able to take part in endurance exercise and break through the new market of smart thermoregulatory wearables.
Amazing stuff. So that is Project Phoenix. And so if you want to find out more about Project Phoenix, come and check out the degree show at the design school and all of the creative arts buildings. And as well, you can find out more about it on the degree show website. And if you want to be able to get in contact with myself or want to find out more about the inclusive design work I do, then go along to this website, and my contact details, I'm sure, will be somewhere here on the screen. But thank you so much in following me on this vlog and my journey in getting ready for the degree show. And I really hope that you come along and see all of the amazing work that all the students have produced this year.